Welcome to this video. We are going to be reviewing all of Unit 5 2D and 3D geometry. Let's get started. Here's the overview for what we're going to talk about in this lesson. A big breakdown of all the lessons that we talked about so far. We started with area of composite shapes. Then we talked about how does the change in a dimension of a shape affect its area. Then we jumped over to 3D shapes with cross sections and revolving. We talked about surface area, volume, and then we asked the question again, how do changes in dimensions affect a shape? Our big idea is area and volume. Okay, I created this map to help you think about these lessons and how they're interconnected. So we started with finding perimeter and area of 2D shapes. Then we asked the question, how does change in dimension affect a shape? After that, we went back to 2D shapes and crossed over, bridged to 3D shapes through the idea of cross sections and revolving. So that was kind of our transition. And then once we got to 3D shapes, we found surface area and volume, and then we went back to that same question. How does change in dimension affect the shape? So you can see how all of these things are kind of interrelated. So let's try some examples, starting with lesson 1, area of composite shapes. How can you break up the shape to the right into smaller shapes to determine its area? Well, gotta remember you're looking for parts of circles, rectangles, and squares. So you can divide this into 1, 2, 3, 4 different shapes. Find the area of each of those pieces and then add them up. You'll need to remember some important area formulas. A circle is going to be pi r squared. Remember, if it's half a circle, it'll be 1/2 pi r squared. Quarter of a circle, 1/4 pi r squared. Area of a rectangle or a square, base times height, and then area of a triangle, 1/2 base times height. So keep those ones in mind, you're going to need them. All right, lesson number 2, changes in dimensions of 2D shapes. So the question is, what will happen to the area and perimeter of the shape to the right if the side lengths are tripled? So use your formulas. I'm actually going to write a perimeter formula. Here I've written base times height, and here I've written W and L, width and length. It's the same thing, okay? So if I plug in my new tripled base and tripled height, I'm going to get an area that is actually 9 times bigger. If I plug in my new tripled width and tripled length, which of course is just another way, oops, that was supposed to be width, sorry about that, 2 times tripled length, I'm actually just going to get a perimeter that is 3 times bigger. Okay, so triple the area, triple the sides, area is 9 times bigger, perimeter is 3 times bigger. Lesson number 3, we made the transition from 2D to 3D shapes, starting with cross sections. What would happen if I sliced this shape? What 2D shape would be formed? Well, you get a circle. So you can see how these two things are connected. The 3D shape is made up of circles. And again, what is formed by the revolution of the following 3D shape? Well, if we revolve that, we'll get a sphere. So you can see how these two things are connected, 2D and 3D shapes. Then we jumped into our discussion of surface area. And surface area is like perimeter, but for 3D shapes. We asked the question, what is the sum of all the areas of the faces of a 3D shape? Each one has its own kind of formula that we use to solve these questions. But remember, the main idea is that you're finding the area of all the faces and adding them up. Lesson number 5, we tackled volume, which is kind of like the 3D version of area. And again, each one has its formulas, and we use these to solve for that 3-dimensional version of area, which is volume. The last lesson, lesson 6, we went back to this question. How does a change in length, width, height, or radius affect the volume and surface area of a shape? So how does it change it? By how much? That was the question we were asking in the last lesson. Okay, so that was a broad overview of all of the lessons that we covered in this unit. Here are the IXLs you can practice to prepare yourself for the exam, which will be an online test via Google Forms. If you need help or if you have questions, please send me an email or join me during my office hours on Zoom. Best of luck.